The starship Eclipse drifted silently through the outer rim of the galaxy, its engines humming softly as it navigated the debris field of a long-forgotten battle. Captain Elias Voss stood on the bridge, his sharp blue eyes scanning the holographic display in front of him. The Eclipse was a scavenger ship, its crew specializing in salvaging valuable technology from derelict vessels. But tonight, the scanners had picked up something unusual, a faint distress signal emanating from a small, crippled alien craft. "Bring us closer," Elias ordered, his voice calm but firm. The crew obeyed, maneuvering the ship toward the source of the signal. As they approached, the alien vessel came into view, a sleek, organic-looking ship, its hull scorched and riddled with holes. It was unlike anything Elias had ever seen. "Life signs?" he asked. "One, no, two," replied his first officer, Lieutenant Kara. "One adult, one child. Both weak." Elias nodded. "Prepare a boarding party. Let's see if we can help." Minutes later, Elias and a small team of crew members stepped into the alien ship. The interior was dark, the air thick with the scent of burnt metal and something else, something almost floral. The walls pulsed faintly with bioluminescent light, casting an eerie glow over the scene. As they moved deeper into the ship, they found the source of the distress signal, a single room, sealed shut but with a crack in the door. Elias pried it open, and what he saw inside stopped him in his tracks. A woman, or at least, what he assumed was a woman, lay slumped against the far wall. Her skin was a deep, iridescent blue, her hair a cascade of silvery strands that seemed to shimmer even in the dim light. Her eyes, large and almond-shaped, glowed faintly as she looked up at him. She was injured, a jagged wound running along her side, but what struck Elias most was the child cradled in her arms, a small, fragile-looking being with the same iridescent skin and glowing eyes. The alien woman's lips moved, and a soft, melodic voice filled the room. Though Elias couldn't understand her language, the universal translator on his belt quickly kicked in. "Please, help us," she whispered. Elias knelt beside her, his medical training kicking in. "You're safe now," he said, his voice gentle. "We'll get you and your child to our ship." But before he could say more, the woman reached out and grabbed his arm with surprising strength. Her eyes bore into his, filled with desperation. "They are coming," she said. "The ones who did this, they will not stop until they have my child. You must protect her. Please. I will give you anything. Anything you want. But save her." Elias frowned. "Who's coming? What are you talking about?" Before she could answer, the ship shuddered violently. An alarm blared, and Kara's voice crackled over the comms. "Captain, we've got company. 3 unidentified vessels just dropped out of warp. They're closing fast." Elias cursed under his breath. "Get the med team down here now. We need to move." As the med team arrived and began tending to the woman and her child, Elias returned to the bridge. The alien ships were unlike anything he'd ever seen, sleek, predatory, and bristling with weapons. They opened fire without warning, their energy beams slamming into the Eclipse's shields. "Return fire," Elias barked. "And get us out of here." The battle was fierce, but the Eclipse was outgunned. As the crew fought to keep the ship intact, Elias couldn't shake the image of the alien woman's pleading eyes. He didn't know who she was or why she was being hunted, but he knew one thing: he couldn't let her or her child fall into the hands of those monsters. The Eclipse managed to escape the alien ships, but not without damage. The engines were strained, and the shields were down to 30%. Elias knew they couldn't outrun their pursuers for long. He needed a plan, and fast. He found the alien woman in the med bay, her wounds bandaged and her child resting beside her. She looked up as he entered, her glowing eyes filled with gratitude, and something else. Something deeper. "Thank you," she said softly. For saving us. Elias nodded. You're welcome. But we're not out of the woods yet. Those ships are still after you. Who are they? And why do they want your child? The woman hesitated, then sighed. My name is Lyra. Was, a scientist. My people, the Zanari, are a peaceful race. But there are others, the Krylos, who seek to exploit our abilities. My child, Nara, is special. She possesses a genetic trait that the Krylos believe will give them an edge in their war against the Galactic Union. They will stop at nothing to capture her. Elias frowned. And what about you? Why are they after you? Lyra looked away. Because I am her mother. And because I know how to unlock her potential. They will torture me for that knowledge, then kill us both. Elias felt a pang of sympathy. He didn't know much about the Zanari, but he could see the fear in Lyra's eyes, and the determination. She would do anything to protect her child. What do you need from me? He asked. Lyra met his gaze. I need you to take us to the Galactic Union. They are the only ones who can protect us. But the journey will be dangerous. The Krylos will hunt us every step of the way. Elias nodded. We'll do what we can. But my ship is damaged, and my crew, they didn't sign up for this. Lyra reached out and placed a hand on his arm. Her touch was warm, almost electric. I understand. And I know I am asking much of you. But I have nothing to offer except myself. Elias blinked. What do you mean? Lyra's eyes held his, unflinching. If you help us, I will give myself to you. Do with me as you wish. I will not resist. But please, save my child. Elias felt a flush of heat rise to his cheeks. He hadn't expected this. Lyra was beautiful, there was no denying that, but this was something else entirely. Lyra, you don't have to, he began, but she cut him off. I do, she said firmly. It is the only way I can repay you. And I want to. Elias swallowed hard. He wasn't sure how to respond. But before he could say anything, the ship shuddered violently. The comms crackled to life. Captain, we've got another problem, Kara said. The Krylos are back. And this time, they've brought reinforcements. Elias cursed. I'll be right there. He turned back to Lyra. Stay here. We'll figure this out. As he left the med bay, Elias couldn't shake the image of Lyra's pleading eyes, or the weight of her offer. He didn't know what he was going to do, but one thing was clear, he couldn't let the Krylos win. The Eclipse was in bad shape. The Krylos ships were relentless, their weapons tearing through the weakened shields. Elias knew they couldn't keep this up much longer. They needed a miracle, or at least a very good plan. As he returned to the bridge, his mind raced. He didn't have the firepower to take on the Krylos head-on, but maybe he didn't need to. The Eclipse was fast, and if they could just buy some time. Kara, plot a course for the nearest Union outpost, he ordered. And see if you can rig the engines for a short-range jump. We need to get out of here. Kara nodded and got to work. Elias turned to the rest of the crew. Everyone else, prepare for evasive maneuvers. We're not going down without a fight. As the crew scrambled to their stations, Elias felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to see Lyra standing behind him, her child cradled in her arms. I can help, she said. My people have a connection to technology. I can boost your ship's systems, but it will require a transfer of energy. Elias frowned. What kind of transfer? Lyra hesitated, then stepped closer. A physical one. I will need to bond with you. It is the only way. Elias felt his heart skip a beat. He didn't fully understand what she was asking, but he could see the determination in her eyes. She was willing to do whatever it took to save her child, and his crew. "All right," he said. "What do I need to do?" Lyra handed her child to Kara, then took Elias by the hand. "Come with me." She led him to his quarters, the door sliding shut behind them. The room was dimly lit, the only sound the hum of the ship's engines. Lyra turned to face him, her glowing eyes searching his. "This will not be easy," she said. "But it is necessary." Elias nodded, his throat dry. "I understand." Lyra stepped closer, her body pressing against his. Her skin was warm, almost feverish, and her breath was soft against his neck. She reached up and placed a hand on his chest, and Elias felt a strange sensation, a tingling, almost electric energy flowing through him. "Relax," she whispered. "Let me guide you." Elias closed his eyes, letting the sensation wash over him. It was unlike anything he'd ever experienced, a deep, almost primal connection that seemed to transcend physical boundaries. He felt Lyra's presence in his mind, her thoughts intertwining with his, and for a moment, they were one. The bond lasted only a few minutes, but it felt like an eternity. When it was over, Elias opened his eyes to find Lyra looking up at him, her expression a mix of exhaustion and relief. "It is done," she said. "Your ship's systems are now enhanced. You should be able to outrun the Krylos." Elias nodded, still trying to process what had just happened. "Thank you," he said. "But, what about you? Are you all right?" Lyra smiled faintly. "I will be. But we must hurry. The Krylos will not give up so easily." As they returned to the bridge, Elias couldn't help but feel a newfound respect, and something more, for Lyra. She had given him a part of herself, and in doing so, had given them all a chance to survive. The Eclipse surged forward, its engines roaring as it leapt into hyperspace. The Krylos ships pursued, but the enhanced systems gave Elias the edge he needed. For the first time in hours, he allowed himself to breathe. But the respite was short-lived. As the ship emerged from hyperspace near the Union outpost, the scanners picked up another problem, a Krylos blockade, waiting for them. "Damn it," Elias muttered. "They knew we were coming." Lyra stepped forward, her expression grim. "They must have intercepted our communications. We cannot fight them head-on." Elias nodded. "Then we'll have to find another way. Kara, see if you can find a weak spot in their formation. We need to slip through unnoticed." As the crew worked to find a solution, Lyra turned to Elias. "There is another way," she said. "But it is dangerous." Elias raised an eyebrow. "What do you have in mind?" Lyra explained her plan. She would use her connection to the ship systems to create a diversion, drawing the Krylos away while the Eclipse slipped past. But it would require her to stay behind, leaving her vulnerable. "I can't let you do that," Elias said. "It's too risky." Lyra placed a hand on his arm. "It is the only way. And I trust you to keep my child safe." Elias felt a lump in his throat. He didn't want to leave her behind, but he knew she was right. They didn't have a choice. "All right," he said. "But promise me you'll find a way to survive." Lyra smiled faintly. "I will try." As the Eclipse approached the blockade, Lyra activated the diversion. The Krylos ships turned their attention to the false signal, giving Elias the opening he needed. The Eclipse slipped past the blockade, its engines straining as it made for the safety of the Union outpost. But as they reached the outpost, Elias couldn't shake the feeling of guilt. He had left Lyra behind, and he didn't know if he would ever see her again. The Union outpost was a bustling hub of activity, its docks filled with ships from across the galaxy. As the Eclipse docked, Elias felt a sense of relief, and dread. They had made it, but at what cost? He handed Lyra's child over to the Union officials, explaining the situation as best he could. They promised to keep the child safe, but Elias couldn't shake the feeling that he had failed Lyra. Days turned into weeks, and Elias found himself haunted by memories of Lyra, her touch, her voice, her sacrifice. He didn't know if she was alive or dead, but he couldn't let go of the hope that she had survived. Then, one day, as he was preparing to leave the outpost, he received a message. It was from Lyra. "I am alive," the message read. "And I am coming to you." Elias felt his heart leap. He didn't know how she had done it, but she had survived. And she was coming back to him. When Lyra finally arrived, Elias was waiting for her at the docks. She looked tired, her body bruised and battered, but her eyes were filled with the same determination he had come to admire. "You made it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Lyra smiled. "I told you I would." As they embraced, Elias felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in weeks. Lyra had given him so much, her trust, her body, her child, and now, she had given him hope. Together, they would face whatever came next. And for the first time in a long time, Elias felt like he had found something worth fighting for. The end.